Do you like taking inspiration from other crafters and making it your own? That's exactly what we're going to do today in this video. Hi, my name is Jess from jess-crafts.ch.page, and I'm here to help you make the most of your crafty supplies and time. So today is the Oh-So Inspired collaboration where a bunch of crafters are hosted by Call Me Crafty Al, and we all take the same card and are inspired by it, and you can see many different interpretations of it. And today's inspiration is this beautiful card from Christina Pokazenieva on, this is from Instagram, and that's her Instagram handle. It'll all be in the video description linked, so it looks like maybe La Cristinelle? I'm not sure how you would like pronounce it. You never know because you don't have spaces in a Instagram handle. But it's this really pretty card with these squares in the background, and I'm pretty sure she like stamped or stenciled them, but I'm going to replace them with pattern paper, and I turned it into a no scrap or paper busting template. And this works with 6x6 paper. I'm going to use 6x6 paper from Newton's Nook Designs today. It's one of those paper pads that I like had to have when it came out and have not used yet. So I thought it was really time to pull that out. So you can find everyone else's videos in the video description or by clicking on the hashtag, and also you can participate in the inspiration and make your own card inspired by this beautiful card. And then there's a hashtag for that in the video, in the video description as well. So let's get started by looking at this paper busting template. I hesitated to make this one because I'd had this idea in the past, or like something similar with these small squares. But I didn't love the idea of having to cut so many teeny tiny squares and make 4 cards from one sheet. I usually kind of try to keep it to 2. I try not to make my templates too fussy. But then when I saw this inspiration piece, it reminded me of this idea I had with the small squares. And so I decided to make it work. And I figured, you know, there's going to be people who don't love the fact that it makes so many cards and it won't be for them, and that's totally fine. So what you're going to start by doing is cutting your 6x6 paper into 6x1 inch strips, because you're going to need to make a bunch of 1x1 squares. So I'll cut them to 6x1, and this I can do on my big Guillotine paper trimmer, but anything like really small, like 1/2 inch, starts to become a little bit more difficult. So when I do, I have to cut one of the triangles in half on the diagonal, and I might just do that with a pair of scissors to keep things easier. You could attempt to cut several of the strips at one time. The paper trimmer can totally handle cutting several strips. But this paper from Newton's Nook Designs is a little bit more slippery. It's not like the most matte paper. And so I'm worried I could accidentally cut them, like one would slip out of my hand. So if I did it, I'd probably go a little bit slower, and then it might not actually save me much time. But, you know, you could just do 2 like that. You see how when I slide it down, they don't slide together. So I'd have to like keep pulling it and being more careful. So you judge on your paper whether that's worth it, but you are cutting everything to those 1 inch squares. So that makes it really easy. You don't have to keep checking your measurements by any means. And then you're going to take some one, there's going to be 4 squares in all, but 1 for each card gets cut on the diagonal. And I'm pretty sure this is going to work. You may never see this video if it doesn't, because then I'll have just re-record everything. But you're going to use one of them at the top and the bottom on their side like this. So this is kind of directional pattern paper in the sense that the top of the paper has the top of the paw prints, but because paw prints don't have to only be facing the top or the bottom, it works out. If you have a very clearly directional pattern paper, such as say with one with words on it, which they do have, I'll do a quick flip through of this. When you turn them on their side, they could work. Your words will just be diagonal, but that's a look you have to decide if you want. And it's a little bit of like a risk you have to take, and you have to be careful when you cut the diagonal. So you may want to keep this one really simple. I also picked a pattern paper that didn't have a white background because I'm going to put it on a white card, and there are no mats for this design. I'm going to attempt to keep this video on the shorter side because I know there's a lot of inspiration available in the hop and from the other videos. But I like to add mostly dry adhesive because now there's adhesive on the back of all of these. I was able to do that off screen, whereas if I used liquid glue, I would have to glue, stop and glue down each one. However, for these triangle pieces at the top, sorry, you can't see my little sketch there. I am referencing that in the corner. I think that the liquid glue works a little better to get into those kind of crevices at the edge, and you want it to be glued down well because it being at the edge of the card may make it a little bit more prone to getting kind of jarred around. Okay, so then we're gonna, once we glue down the triangle, I think that it's easiest to start with one of the triangles. And then you're gonna kind of build from there. So the corners of the square line up with the corners of the triangle. And then you're gonna keep kind of building out from there. Now, I probably could give you like exact measurements for how you're supposed to space each of these, but I honestly would never use something like that. I would just be eyeballing it like I am now, and it should generally work out. But this one might be one that you want to kind of like do a practice run where you put down everything without adhesive, see if it makes sense, and then you kind of know where to build from. Now, some of these pieces are going to line up. Like these two pieces are directly cut from each other. But that's not true on most of them. Okay, most of them I didn't keep track of where it was cut from. So I'm actually going to make a point not to put those directly next to each other, although that looks like it was cut from there. Oof, that's weird. It couldn't possibly have been a cut from both places. But I don't want any of them to look like they should line up. I actually want them all to look a little kind of random, like they were just sort of pulled out. That may be more difficult than I'd like it to be, but something kind of to consider is that if you put some that clearly match up and others that clearly don't, that might look a little awkward. Overall though, don't worry about it. It's a handmade card. Anybody who's overanalyzing it doesn't deserve your card. Or anyone who's overanalyzing it and then will be critical of you probably doesn't deserve a handmade card there. And the reason I picked, again, something without the white background is because if I were to use that side, for one, the dogs are way too big. It would look really weird as a 1-inch square, but also they won't really stand out. So you do want to pick something with a more solid background, or reverse it, use a white background paper on a solid colored card. So I also picked up the dogs that kind of go with the paper pad. Obviously you don't need either, like you can get just the dies or just the paper pad, but I had them, so I wanted to use them together. And I thought that since I'm going to take a lot of time in arranging all of these squares, it might be nice to have something really simple to do for the embellishment. So I pulled in the different dogs, and because I left my dies attached, although you could of course just tape them back together, I'm able to cut up a whole bunch of different dogs at one time. So the fact that I'm making 4 cards is not a big deal because I can cut 4 dogs really quickly. And I did layer these up, so there are a layer of 3, but again, much easier than if I were to only want 1 dog for every single, every single card had this dog, I'd have to run it through 9 times or whatever. So I try to make little shortcuts like that. I want to arrange it such that in the final placement, the dog's face is on the white background because then you notice it more. If I put the face or some of the important details, in this case I'm going to assume the face is the most important detail, on top of this colored paper, you really don't notice it. It kind of blends in with the paw print. So I think it's important, and this you go for any die you're using. Obviously, I don't expect you to be recreating this specific die, but just as a way of thinking of things. Like, why does sometimes an element not stand out? It could be because it's blending into the background. So pulling it into a high contrast place here where it really pops off of the white, and then rearranging my hugs word to go with it. You could, of course, I think there's like dies that also have like animal sayings from Newton's Nook, because Newton's Nook does like a ton of animal themed things. So if you're like a big dog or cat person, really definitely check out Newton's Nook. I pulled in an Altenew hugs die. This particular versatile greeting set is exactly what it says, versatile greetings. And they have the background and or a shadow die and the word die, which I personally really love. I know I would use hey, hugs, hello, and thanks a lot, so I definitely was like, this one is one for me. The scale's pretty good for card making, so you get a lot of them in a pretty inexpensive set when you think about compared to like buying a single hugs or hello die. And so I will glue those down, and then I will create the rest of the cards. You can find this printable in the video description below so that you can download it and recreate your own no scrap cards inspired by this sketch and join along with the inspiration, and maybe you will pull in some colors or something else from the sketch as well, or just create this card at some other time. If you found this video inspiring, here's another video where you can find more ideas for enjoying your crafty time and supplies. Let me know you like this video with a share to your crafty community, subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next template or tutorial, and check the video description for product links. See you in the next video!